Have you ever imagined that branded goods, famous brands that you once considered symbols of luxury, are now just empty names? While the US continues to push the trade war, Chinese traders are constantly turning things around. Can they turn the crisis into an opportunity, turning all of Trump's tricks into a springboard to rebuild their consumer market? The truth is gradually revealed. The trade war between the US and China, which initially revolved around huge tariff numbers, has quickly turned into a much bigger battle, going beyond numbers and spreading into the world of e-commerce and social networks. While Donald Trump is trying to crush China with increasingly high tariffs, sometimes up to 245%, something that no one seems to notice is helping China fight back strongly: TikTok. Every time Trump imposes a tax, TikTok becomes even more steadfast, as if it is silently tweaking every beat of this policy. But China is not just standing still. Chinese merchants, instead of accepting defeat, held their phones, recorded videos in English, and bluntly declared 89% of global luxury goods originate from China. This statement is no different from a punch in the face for Trump and those who believe that his tariff strategy will shake the Chinese economy. And then a new wave began to rise, as these merchants continuously exposed the truth about the true value of luxury items that Americans still passionately believe in. They show the world that behind those flashy things are numbers that are not what people think. After shocking statements, Chinese traders not only talk but also prove it with actions. They began to release a series of evidence that no one could have expected. The sharp comparisons between the prices of branded goods in the US and the actual prices in China shocked the whole world. For example, a branded bag that Americans are willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars on cost only $1,000, 0 cents in China. A pair of Nike shoes, an American sports fashion icon, cost several $100s in the US, but in China, only $10. It sounds like a joke, but it was broadcast publicly in exciting live streams. After just a few minutes, the comments section on TikTok exploded. American consumers couldn't believe their eyes. They were shocked. Many even had to admit that it felt like being cheated all their lives. What they once believed in about value, brand, class, is now just an empty, meaningless shell. Not only Americans, but also the international community must also be stunned. They must take their hats off in admiration at the solidarity and not backing down temperament of Chinese merchants. And then, like a declaration of war without guns and bullets, these merchants sent a message straight to Trump: no matter how high the tax, we can still live well because our goods are both cheap and of the same quality as anyone else. A counterattack not with weapons, but with truth. And that truth cannot be denied. What happens when containers are filled with goods and products produced for the US market but cannot be exported because tariffs are too high? The answer comes from an unexpected place: exciting live streams on the Red Note platform, an application that is taking the spotlight in China. And now Chinese merchants are no longer sitting still, they are starting to take action. Tens of thousands of sellers, instead of waiting for the pile of goods to sleep in the warehouse, have turned to live stream to sell these products. Products that were originally intended only for the US market now, because tariffs increased from 145% to 245%, have to stay and cannot be exported. But instead of being disappointed, they turned challenges into opportunities. One of the most notable live streams was from the account Din Din Cloud. He sells all kinds of household appliances, from rice cookers to juicers to toasters, and most importantly, the message she conveys: America breaks the contract, full 90% discount. Indeed, these products are being sold at unbelievable prices, making everyone surprised. Equally interesting, the account Mui Co Good Goods also had an extremely impressive live stream. She broadcast from the middle of a warehouse filled with containers containing goods that could not be exported to the US. There is no more storage space in the warehouse, and those products have only one option left: discharge. Famous items like Costa Coffee appear in the video, but mostly obscure brands like Omas and ABS. In a surprising counterattack, Chinese merchants not only faced difficulties but also turned them into opportunities. They not only sell inventory but also send a strong message: no matter how intense the tariff war gets, we are alive and well, and we have a way to get through it. When Trump imposed high tariffs, making exports from China to the US a difficult problem, Beijing did not show weakness. Instead, they quickly turned the situation around, focusing on the potential domestic market. In just a short time, the Chinese government launched a series of campaigns to support domestic businesses. One of the prominent moves is JD.com's launch of a support fund worth 200 billion yuan, equivalent to $27.35 billion US, to help products stuck because of tariffs be sold domestically. Besides the support fund, at major trade fairs such as the Canton Fair, Chinese businesses cannot hide their disappointment with the US market. The US market now seems to have frozen, some business representatives shared. Even though the American customer has not canceled the old order, the request is just to wait more with no progress. With strong support from the government and determination from domestic businesses, China not only copes with the tariff war, but also takes advantage of the opportunity to strengthen its domestic market and build a future that does not depend on the US. Although many people are skeptical about the live streams on RedNote, thinking that they are just marketing tricks to attract attention, one thing cannot be denied. They are part of an extremely wise soft response strategy that China is implementing. These live streams are not simply an opportunity to sell or clear inventory. They carry within them a strong message of solidarity and national pride. Slogans such as "China can do it" and "Save the factory" quickly spread, evoking a great sense of responsibility in people's hearts. Every product they buy is not just an act of consumption, but a way to support the country during this challenging period. In particular, these campaigns are sparking a strong wave of domestic consumption. Buying Chinese products is no longer just a choice, but part of a national campaign. People not only supported the economy, but also showed solidarity and resilience in the face of external pressure. That is how China turns challenges into opportunities, building strong national pride to deal with the trade war convincingly. When pushed into a difficult position, Beijing is not the type to sit still and endure. When tariffs from the US skyrocketed, China immediately counterattacked, and not just stopping at imposing import taxes. Instead, they used a more sophisticated, more powerful strategy, tightening the export of rare metals, something the whole world depends on. These metals are not only important to China, but are also vital to the Western economy. With this move, Beijing is showing that it can make things difficult for other major powers, no less than dealing a strong blow to them. But China doesn't stop there. They launched a fierce legal battle, putting American companies on the list of unreliable entities. This is a strong message sent straight to Washington. China is willing to use policy and law to create pressure. These companies now face a series of restrictions, from trading bans to loss of key benefits. Since 2019, China has created a strict legal framework to punish organizations that comply with foreign bans. These organizations now face harsh measures, from investment and import and export restrictions to the risk of losing labor and immigration benefits. China not only counterattacked, but also asserted that it has enough strength to cope with all pressure from the US, creating a clear advantage in this tense trade war. On April 8, a long list of unofficial retaliation measures suddenly spread on Chinese internet, startling the whole world. These were direct attacks on the US, not by openly declaring war, but by covert, discreet, but powerful moves. First, China decided to ban imports of poultry and soybeans from the US, a painful blow to American agriculture, especially when both of these products are this country's export strength. But that's not all. China also stopped negotiating with the US on controlling the fentanyl trade, then continued to tighten intellectual property rights on US products. And then another shocking move appeared. China officially stopped importing Hollywood movies. Not only that, they also limit professional services, from American lawyers to auditors. These measures are not direct sanctions, but they are aimed at putting pressure on areas where the US already has advantages. At its peak, on April 10, China's film administration announced that the number of licensed American films would be significantly reduced. And yet, just a few days before, China announced that it would investigate the US corporation DuPont, accusing them of violating intellectual property laws and engaging in monopolistic behavior. Each move is a strong blow to US industries, causing the country to face a trade war not only at the negotiating table, but also on other invisible fronts. As trade blows become increasingly tense, the US service industry, which is the backbone of commercial activities in China, suddenly faces a great risk. Law firms, banks, and consulting businesses are facing unprecedented difficulties. National security regulations have been tightened, causing many companies to close or reduce the scale of operations. Political reality makes the situation even more complicated. Trump, throughout his time in office, relentlessly suppressed American law firms when they began investigating matters related to him. These companies can now expect no support from the US government. They can only manage on their own in an increasingly difficult environment. However, China knows how to calculate very well. Even though their relationship has become strained, they are still careful about touching giants like Apple or Tesla. Because if they do so, they will not only face the risk of unemployment, but also serious losses in production. In fact, a war with these names will cause the Chinese economy to fall into a state of instability that they cannot accept. When the trade war broke out, many people thought it was just an attack, but for China, it is a golden opportunity to change the situation. Beijing quickly realized that this was the time to promote domestic consumption more strongly than ever. With pressure from sanctions, Chinese brands began to revive. Huawei, a prime example, would likely reap major benefits if Apple were removed from the market. In fact, Trump's tough attitude unintentionally helped Beijing easily clear the way to eliminate American brands from the Chinese market, creating a large space for domestic businesses. With each attack from Trump, China becomes more determined to exploit opportunities and turn risks into stepping stones to grow stronger. The trade war between the US and China has gone beyond just tariff numbers. It quickly turned into a full-blown economic war. And China? They have proven that they are not opponents that can be easily conquered. With its tenacity and flexible response, Beijing is fighting with a spirit of relentless solidarity. Meanwhile, the US is facing a great danger, being isolated in the world's largest consumer market. With each attack from Trump, China becomes more steadfast, not only resisting but also taking advantage of it to move forward. This fight is no longer just about taxes. It has become an all-out struggle where every move can change the situation. So while the trade war becomes increasingly tense, counterattack strategies from China are not just simple retaliation. They are changing the situation, turning difficulties into opportunities. And the question remains open: can the US maintain the upper hand, or will China be the ultimate winner in this race? Let's wait and see.